All right, so I'm going to continue with this. We're going to move on to the next part, which is investigating the feature encoding. So here we're giving you a data with about, I think, 20 different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 features. One of them is going to be our label, which is going to be our G3. So 23 different features. Remember, each column, each column is going to be, each of these is going to be a column in our input data. And so we're gonna let's analyze this. We're gonna use the logistic regression to predict the high school student's final grade according to the discrete category of the 0 to 20. And so on the first part, we already kind of give you the way to extract the data. We're gonna use a URL to extract the CSV file information and set it up into a data frame. So we're putting it into a data frame. We're creating these maps to be able to categorize a primary, middle school, high school, and higher. So if it's none, we're gonna put a 0. Primary is gonna be 1. Middle school is gonna be assigned a value 2. High school 3, and higher education is 4. We're creating a map. So we're adding here a new feature into our data frame, and this is where we actually add a row values of our map, and then we're gonna also have another feature with the travel time and the study time. So we're assigning those values, modifying those information, and we can see this. We run this, we're gonna be able to see the labels, the columns that we have, which are the features that we have in this scenario. Now, as you can see here, we actually have a big problem. We have a lot of text. Those are going to cause the trouble because when we try to train our models, they cannot understand or interpret what a text value is. So we're going to have to do some encoding. In other words, change it into ordinary, or do the dummy, or the, what is the other one? The one hot encoded. Sorry, I had a moment there. Okay, so somehow we need to be able to create a data frame that does not contain any text values, and then they're either removed. We either remove those features, or we encode them with a number, right? Using either an ordinary, or using an hot one encoding, or dummy one. Okay, so let's actually start by we want to be able to separate our features and our labels. So this is saying that we want to be able to have as our features everything except the G3. Okay, so we want to have features. It's going to be everything. So we're going to drop everything except columns G3. And then our labels will be, what we're trying to predict, which is going to be our G3. And then we're going to split our data using the train test split. And we're going to pass in the features, the label, the test size is going to be 0.2. In other words, 80% training, 20% test. We're going to still use a random, so that way you guys can you can actually have the same outcome as me. We tested, it runs, that's good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a logistic regression model, and then we're going to try to fit our data. So now let's see what happens when we actually try to fit our data. So if I try to fit our use our trained data that we have right now, let's see what happens. So right now, we know by a fact that some of those features have text. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to train that model with those features. And let's see what happens. What happens is that a lot of the features have a string instead of a decimal, instead of a float value. So that's a problem. So that's why we either need to drop the features or encode them. And that's the purpose of this section of this lecture, is that we want to be able to implement some other advanced machine learning techniques. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a version of the data where it's not encoded, but we're going to drop the features that have a string. We're going to have another one where we use the ordinary encoding. We're not going to drop those text. Well, we're going to drop them sort of way, but we're going to change them into a number value. And then we're going to have another one where we have the one hot encoded and then the other one with a dummy variable. So we're gonna manipulate our data so it represents all these 4 different versions. Excuse me. So the first one is where we check how many of those features or columns have a they're object type. Object type means that they're not an integer, they're not a float, they're not a double. So what this is doing is going to the whole data frame and selecting the types that are not integers, doubles, or floats, practically any string. And we're gonna create a list here of all the columns that have a string as an input value. And then let's see what happens. You can see all those columns. So all these columns right here, all these features have a non-numerical value. Okay, we're gonna keep that. We're gonna use that to be able to create our model. So right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create our data, train data and test data that do not have features with strings. So all we need to do is pass in our columns. So we're gonna say which columns we want it to be dropped, and the columns will be having the columns.name encode. So what we're doing is we're passing the list. We're passing this list right here into our columns to be dropped. Now this is only creates a copy, so that's why we're saving 1 to this variable. So that's gonna be something that we're gonna be able to keep. That's not gonna change. This is always gonna go back to itself. So you're not gonna be able to modify this one, but we're gonna be able to save that copy into another variable, which is what we want to do. Now we can do the same thing for the x test dot drop, and we're gonna do columns again. The same thing, columns equal to columns underscore 2 encode. And let's see how that looks. So now you can see here, there's no string values in here. We have removed any feature that does not have a numerical value. And so now what we're going to do is we want to encode it using an ordinary encoding. So we're going to do the same thing, but now instead of removing them, we're going to assign them a value. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the original training data and the original test data and put them in this xtrain ordinary and xtest ordinary. We're going to create an object for the ordinary encoder, and what we're going to do here is we're going to take our columns, we're going to take our data. This represents the whole thing right now. This represents the whole thing right now. And what we want to do is we want to be able to just select the ones that have a string as input value. So what we're doing here is we're saying, let's select all the columns that do not have a numerical value. And what we're going to do is we're going to transform them into a number. We're going to find a value for those ones. So we're going to assign them a numerical value. We're going to do the same thing for the test. So practically, we're just going to copy this. and put it on the test. Change this to test. And there you go. You see now the school has, oops, why does it keep doing that? The school have now numerical values. The sex has numerical values. The address has numerical values. Fam size, romantic has numerical values. So we have give them a numerical value for we change the strings into numerical value, and that's encoding. Now we're going to do the same thing with the hot encoded one. So for the hot encoded one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make a copy, put it into our hot encoded one. Again, for the test and the train, we're going to create our object for our encoded one. We're going to use a transformation that Pam does. And now what we need to do is we need to pass in our train columns. So we just care about the train columns. Those are the ones that we need to change. So that's why we're going to take those columns and so what we're doing here is we're selecting well, I can just use that one too. Actually, we don't. I want to use. Actually, I want to use this one because I don't want to use this one because this one's actually dropping some of the columns. I don't want to do that. So what we wanted to do is we want to look at the original training data, look at those columns, the columns that have strings, and we want to fit it to a hot one. We're gonna turn them into a features. So we're gonna extract those columns. We're gonna create columns for those ones, and we're gonna print those columns so that way you can see it. So we have generated all these columns now. These columns did not exist before, but we have created them. You can see school GP, school MS, sex F, sex M, address R, address U, fam size G3, fam size LE3, and so on and so on. So you can see these columns have been generated for us so that they can serve up a purpose for the encoding values of our labels in the features. And now what we wanted to do is we want to be able to transform them. So we're going to again use the X train columns to encode. And then do the same thing for the bottom part. I'm just going to copy this. Put it right there. And then instead of being train, is test. And let's see how that looks. So you can see now on the all this features that we have added, it has either 1 or 0. 1 or 0. So we have generated those features because we encode them. You can see how many we have generated. We have more over here in the middle in the ... but we have encoded them. And now we're going to do the same thing for the dummy variables. So we're gonna again, we're just copying the dropped ones to the train. Oh, this is actually DV, and so we're gonna use them later. So right now we're gonna use the one on Did not change. Okay, so right now we're doing is the one hard code one. Wait. Anyways, so we're gonna do the same thing. Columns to encode, and then we're gonna have here. Uh, that's correct. That's correct. Let's see. We get those. We get all those new features columns, and now what we want to do is we want to print them. So we're gonna transform them and create and assign them a value. So what we're gonna do is columns to encode, and we're gonna do the same thing for the other one. Test. This is going to be dv 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 all right, let's see. All right, so we get those values. Nice. Again, we're changing the column. We're dropping the column, the old columns that had a text, and we're changing them with a number. So if that column had two different options as input strings, then we're gonna add two more features. If that feature column, whatever you want to call it, had five different input types, like let's say it's black, red, blonde, black, and yellow, um, then it's gonna have five additional features. Now let's actually put them into compare them using the logistic regression. So we're gonna train them with each one, right? So we're gonna do the drop x train drop, comma y train. We're gonna use the logistic regression to train them, and then see what's the prediction. And let's see if that works. Yep. So that wasn't a very good prediction, right? 29%, that's not very good. Let's see the confusion matrix. So the confusion matrix it's already done for us, and you can see that it's really close to the middle. So I mean we have a lot of off, so we're supposed to be getting a diagonal line, but we're getting a lot of values off. So that was not a very good one. So that was the drop the features. Let's see what happens when we actually use the ordinary one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste. I don't want to do the whole thing again. Write them by one. And I'm going to go into the next video.